Hi, everyone. This is Svava Brooks here. I am so happy that you're joining us again for another amazing interview here on the Journey to the Heart, where I'm talking to experts, professionals, coaches who are sharing their passion and their unique approach to thriving. Yes, really thriving and living wholeheartedly. And I am so excited for our conversation here today with Bruce Van Horn. Welcome, Bruce.
Svava, it's such a pleasure to be with you again.
Thank you. Likewise. So I want to tell the audience just a little bit about you before we're going to go
You
into
go
our
right ahead.
questions. Okay. So Bruce is a father. I love that you put that first, Bruce. And I know you personally and follow you, so I know that's really important role in your life. He's also a best-selling author, life coach, speaker, entrepreneur, business owner, marathon runner, and a cancer survivor. Bruce, as you will see here in a minute, radiates passion and love for life and people. Oh, that's really what I think brought our hearts together.
I think so.
He's a walking, talking proof that you can change your life by changing your thoughts. He loves sharing his story with the world because he knows you can transform your mind and create the life you want rather than just accepting the life you get. Right? Amen to that,
Amen
Bruce.
to that, right?
Exactly.
You know?
So I know you have such a huge following on social media, and your book is very successful with Amazon on the bestseller list out there. But let's start with Bruce.
Okay.
What brought you? I know you've had some challenges in life, like most people that are here watching this.
Yeah.
So why don't we touch upon what was Bruce's journey here?
Bruce's journey is that sadly of so many people. There's so much truth in the phrase. Now, of course, it's an old phrase, so I forget who it was that actually wrote it, but uses the word men. And it says, most men live lives of quiet desperation. So ladies, just substitute mankind there. Most people live lives of quiet desperation. We know that there's more out there, but we don't know how to do it. We don't know how to get it. And we wind up settling for what we think will make us comfortable. And, we just wind up being miserable in the process. And that was my journey. Mine was also sadly the typical American dream that I bought into, and it's a lie, that happiness, fulfillment, satisfaction, self-worth, all of these things that we look for, we're taught to look for them outside of ourselves. We're taught to look for them in money, in material possessions, even in relationships. That I will feel worthwhile as a human being if somebody will just love me the way I want to be loved. If somebody would treat me with dignity and respect, I will feel like I'm a significant person if I make a certain amount of money and I have a certain kind of house in a certain neighborhood, and all of these external things. And really what it boils down to is that I never had any real self-identity. So if by the time you had asked me, by the time I was in my mid-40s, if you had asked me, Bruce, who are you? The only way I possibly could have answered that question was by describing for you the roles that I played. So I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm an employee and an employer, so all of these things. And so if there's, if your identity is in being a husband, if there's problems in your marriage, then you've got an identity problem. If there's problems in your parenting, then you've got an identity problem. If there's problems in your work or your ability to provide for your family, and then when you encounter the perfect storm and you've got problems in all of those areas, you've got a real identity crisis. And that's really where I was. So by the time I was 42 years old, I had no idea who I was, but I know that I hated everything about my life. I was not finding satisfaction in anything because I kept grasping. I kept, I thought that if I just worked harder at whatever it was, or if I put in more effort, but I would get the same results. And ultimately, it all just came crashing down to the point where when I was 42 years old, well, I will be the first to admit that I never took any active steps to end my life. I did think about it. I did entertain the thought, and I thought that that would bring an end to my pain. And really, all of that changed through, I love the word coincidence, because most of us use the word incorrectly, because I'm about to tell you, most people say, well, there's no such thing as coincidence. But the problem is that everything is coincidence, because the word coincidence does not mean random or by chance. The word coincidence literally means to coincide. It means these two seemingly random things did come together perfectly. So my older brother came to Richmond to run the Richmond Marathon, and my oldest son was 8 at the time, and we went and watched him run. And then later that evening, he spent the evening with us. He said, "Bruce, you should do this." And I said, "I should do what?" He said, "You should run marathons." And I said what everybody says: "Oh, there's no way I can do that." No, there's no way I could do that. And I didn't really, it was also, I just didn't even want to. Yeah, and he said a phrase to me that, not that night and not, within the weeks or months immediately, but about 6 months later, I remembered these words, and they radically changed my life. He said, "The hardest part about running a marathon is making the decision to do it." I didn't believe him. I was pretty sure the hardest part about running a marathon was the actual running part. Um, but I at least at that point decided, if my older brother can run marathons, I can at least join a gym and lose a couple extra pounds and, get in a little bit better shape, because I was woefully out of shape. I couldn't play with my boys more than 10 or 15 minutes before having to sit and say, "Let daddy catch his breath." So I did. I went to the gym and I got on the treadmill, and at first I just started walking, and then I started jogging, and I didn't think I would ever be able to jog a mile without walking. It just seemed like forever. But once I did, something in me clicked, and it was only like a week later that I was jogging 2 miles on the treadmill without walking. And then by that time, it's becoming the spring of 2006. And so I enrolled in a fun little neighborhood 5K, and I ran that, and it was fun. And so another month or so later, I ran in a neighborhood 10K, and it was fun. And at this point, bear in mind, I still hate everything about my life, but I was finding joy in running, and I was finding that I was actually pretty good at it. And so after that 10K, I actually decided to listen to my brother's words, and I decided I'd train for my first marathon. And so I started doing that. And it was during the summer, I was well into my marathon training. It was during the summer of 2006 that I was out on an 18-mile run, that my brother's words came crashing back into my memory. And I came to a complete stop. It was early in the morning, so there was no traffic, but I came to a complete stop in the middle of the road, and I literally had an epiphany. It was a, oh my God moment. My brother is right, but I misunderstood him. And earlier that morning, because I still had this huge chip on my shoulder. I glossed over the fact that by this time I have filed bankruptcy twice in my life. I had a daughter in between my 2 sons who passed away tragically. And so I still had this huge chip on my shoulder that nothing in my life was going the way I wanted. And if you had said, "Bruce, what's your problem?" earlier that morning or the night before, I would have, without any hesitation, been able to rattle off for you all of my problems. And more importantly, Svava, I would have been able to give you an equally long list of exactly who or what was to blame for all of my problems. Guess who was not on that list?
Hmm.
Bruce was nowhere to appear on that list. I was a total victim. Everybody else was to blame for all of my problems. But it occurred to me, I'm now a marathon runner. Even though I hadn't run the marathon, I'm out doing an 18-mile run. If the marathon was in 2 weeks, I'd be able to do it. In my brain, I was a marathon runner. There was only one person responsible for that transformation in my life, and it was me. And what I discovered, the oh my God moment, was my brother is right. You see, I misunderstood when he said the hardest part about running a marathon is making the decision to do it. I thought that he was talking about a decision that you make once, but it's not. It's a decision that I had made every single day to become something other than what I was. And so I looked at my body. My body was completely transformed. I was no longer overweight and out of shape. I had lost, the extra 15 pounds I was carrying. I was able to run without getting out of breath. I was a marathon runner. There was only one person responsible for that. You can't outsource marathon training to somebody else, right? You have to claim 100% responsibility for it. And that was something I had not done in my life in a very, very long time. And it occurred to me that the only way I was able to do what I had done with my physical health was by a process of making decisions, but more importantly, by controlling my thoughts. You see, your feet will not go one step farther than your brain tells them they can go. Your feet may be screaming, Bruce, it's time for us to stop. But if the brain says, no, feet, we still got another 2 miles to go, your feet will begrudgingly go those extra 2 miles if the brain says it. It's all about thoughts. So it occurred to me, everything, the misery, the disappointment, the pain that I was experiencing in my life was all a decision that I was making to tell myself a story about pain and suffering and disappointment and loss. I was telling myself I was a victim. I had stopped doing that as it related to my body. And it occurred to me that if I could change my body, could I change every area of my life by applying the same types of disciplines? And so that's what I set out to do. And so that's really that's the where I was. And now I got to tell you, it was a lot easier training for my first marathon than it was training, getting rid of 42 years of negative self-talk. So that process took me multiple years, but I stopped criticizing myself and I started coaching myself. I caught myself whenever I was being cynical or sarcastic or pessimistic. I was the doom and gloom guy. I was the guy who, if something good did happen in my life, I was so quick to say, well, that's not going to last very long, so I'm not going to celebrate it. And so I started celebrating all of the little victories and cherishing those things. And just like it took a while for my body to turn around, my brain, and so while a lot of my situations, my circumstances didn't change, my attitude about them, my perspective, my thoughts about my life are what changed. And so and as you well know, the experience of our life is 100% something that happens in our brain. It's a story that we tell ourselves.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Bruce. I've heard your story a few times, but it's just so inspiring, and the way you tell it each time, I hear something new, and I get it on a
Maybe because I
different
put
level.
something new in it. Maybe I
No,
remember
maybe,
something new, but
maybe, but it's just so brilliant because, like you said, and you do it so with such compassion that emphasizing the need. It wasn't just a one-time decision. It was an ongoing decision. It was a decision to be kind to yourself and start to notice how you were, living in the past, and kind of giving make others responsible for your unhappiness. And I
Exactly.
mean, that was definitely a turning point for me on my journey. You know, once I started to heal and I got educated about the impact of trauma, it was really that shift from, okay, I'm here now what? You know, that
Right.
I decided, okay, I'm going to just trust I'm here to learn about love. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to learn about love, because I missed out on some years of that. And the only one who can teach me about love, of course, I thought it was my husband for a few years. I made him responsible for that. Like, you're not
Mhm.
loving me correctly. So, and then one day I'm like, wait a minute, it's my job to love me, you know? And so much shifted. And again, it wasn't just a one-time decision.
Right.
And still to this day,
You
I'm the
have
one.
to decide
Exactly.
every day,
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that.
You're
And I
welcome.
can see how that is kind of the foundation of what you do. I mean, your podcast, you're constantly reminding people how important it is. And like you said, that's the hardest part. It
Yeah.
is the hardest part to shift. And then you've written a book about it, right?
Yeah, because even then, we tend to think that when our lives are when we're in suffering and pain, it's really easy to think that it will always be that way for the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Conversely, when everything is good and, everybody's happy and loving and all this stuff, you think it'll always be that way. But life isn't about that. Life is about seasons, it's about ebbs and flows. We just had the winter solstice, which means that it was the shortest period of sunlight here in North America. In the southern hemisphere, it was the longest day. So there's a perspective thing, where
Yes.
we've got darkness here, somewhere else in the world has light, and it will shift. But well, I had continued to do my development, and I worked on my life, and I really did get my life completely turned around, and I was back to doing work that was important and meaningful, where all of my life I was doing work simply just to make money. And, while I was good at it, it was never really fulfilling. And so I really tapped into discovering my purpose and doing the work that, regardless of how much money I make, it's the work that makes me come alive. And that's the work that I know that I was born to do. And so I was doing that work. And had I not done that kind of work, I probably wouldn't be here, because on February 17th of 2014, so just over, coming up on 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
I got a phone call from my doctor. I had just turned 50. And when your doctor calls you and you can hear in his voice that he's holding back tears, this isn't very good news. And even before I heard his voice, I think most people have experienced this in some way. I saw the caller ID, so I knew who it was. It was 9:22 in the morning. I'll never forget it. I just put my youngest son on the school bus. I was sitting down to eat breakfast, and I saw the caller ID. I was expecting the call, but he had told me to expect his call with completely different news. But I knew before I even answered the call that I knew exactly what he was going to tell me. And I knew that eating breakfast that morning would be the last normal thing that I would do for a very, very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And so he called me at 8. I was 50 years old. He said, "Bruce, I don't even know how to tell you this, because I told you that I expected completely different results, but you've got stage 4 prostate cancer." You know, so even now I cry. I cry from a little different perspective because I'm on this side of it now, but I cried then and really felt like I got the wind kicked out of me. And sure, I sat at my kitchen table and I cried for about 2 hours. Then I had to get pragmatic about it. It's like, you know what? I've got 2 boys. They will be coming home from school in a matter of hours. I'm in no shape to tell them right now. So it was actually a couple days later before I told
Mhm.
them. But then I have to get about the business of, all right, what do I do? You know, what are the mechanics of dealing with all of this? So it began the just nonstop for the next 2 months, doctor appointment after blood test, after body scans. And, you know, it's just anyone who's dealt with cancer, you just know what that's like. But I knew that I had an opportunity here. I could go right back into victim mode thinking, and I could tell myself a story in which I'm a victim. See, what was the point of all this positive self-talk you've been doing? What good did it do you? You've got cancer now. I could tell myself that story, and sadly, that's the story so many people choose. But I knew that I had a different option, and I had experienced that in my life. And so I decided, and I sat my boys down. I said, these are just the facts. I have cancer. And I have a significant form of cancer. So it's not just, oh, I've got a toothache. This could be a life and death situation. I don't know what the outcome is, but I know that the outcome, we have a huge part to play in the outcome based on the story that we tell ourselves, because I write about this in my book. We are hope-shaped creatures, which means that what we believe about the future determines the actions that we take today. So if we think that we're going to die in 2 months, we're not going to take any actions to that. I told myself a story in which I saw a complete recovery, complete victory. And so I actually update my bio. I don't say I'm a cancer survivor anymore. I say I'm a cancer conqueror because I was active in the process. For me, I don't begrudge anyone who uses the word survivor, but for me, that seemed like I was taking a passive role in it. Well, I happened to have survived this ordeal. No, I took a very active part in it, and I made choices to make sure that, I didn't know how it was going to work out, but I was going to go through it telling myself a story that it would be okay, or at least that something good would come from this. And so that's how I went into it. And a little less than 2 months later, I had surgery. And as you know, the surgery was supposed to be an hour and a half long, fairly, even though it was a very aggressive form of cancer, the surgery to remove your prostate, and to back up just a little bit, prostate cancer, like so many forms of cancer, is very, very treatable if it's caught early enough. I didn't have any options. We did not know if it had yet metastasized. We knew that it was outside of the prostate gland, which is stage 4, but we did not know had it spread to the lymph systems yet. So anyway, the surgery was supposed to be an hour and a half, 1, maybe 2 nights in the hospital. It turned out the surgery was almost 5 hours long. I spent over 5 nights in the hospital and nearly died on the operating table because, through no fault of my surgeon, I lost 70% of my blood on the operating table. And he did everything that he could to not only get all of the cancer, but to save my life. And to, there are a couple other goals involved in that type of surgery. And he had made me a promise that he would try to accomplish all of those goals. And it took a long time. And so it was an ordeal. And the problem with losing so much blood is, after you've had major abdominal surgery, they had all of these really great plans to give me all of these great drugs to keep me pain-free during my recovery process. Guess what I didn't get to take? I didn't get to take any of the pain medication. So I had to do what's called radical retropubic prostatectomy on no pain medication. And the pain that I was in Just would not wish that
Mm.
anybody. But it was a gift. I didn't know it at that second, but because I was in so much pain, the only way I could deal with it was by living literally one breath at a time. And so I would say I would take a breath in, not too deep because it would hurt. I'd take a breath in, I'd let it out, and I had this little mantra. I'd say, okay, Bruce, you took a breath, you didn't die. Let's do another one just like it. I wouldn't count them. I wouldn't string them together. I treated each breath as a unique miracle. And that's how I lived for a couple days. I would drift. They tried to keep me sedated, so they gave me some sleeping medication. And so I was in and out of consciousness. I have no idea who really came to see me or what people said to me in the hospital. But then something occurred to me as I was taking a breath. And this is where it turned into an amazing blessing. Because I thought that I was a pretty grateful person. And I had been writing in my gratitude journal and all this for years. But it was it was like God said to me, you know what, Bruce? You have no idea. And I'm about to show you. And so I took a deep breath and I breathed in and I breathed out and was about to say my mantra. You took a breath, you didn't die, let's do another one just like it. But in that breathing cycle, I had an epiphany, like I did back when I was marathon training. It occurred to me that if I was able to breathe, then that proved beyond the shadow of a doubt that in that moment, I have everything I need. Everything. So we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I respect that. But really, from my perspective these days, that's Maslow's hierarchy of wants. Because all you really need, self-actualization is nice, but in any given moment, all we need is to be able to breathe in air into lungs that are able to oxygenate it, hand off oxygenated blood to our heart, have that heart circulate that oxygenated blood to the vital organs, and to have enough of a functioning cerebral cortex to make that process happen. So if you're able to breathe, then you have absolutely everything that you need. And what occurred to me is that, well, if you can smell, and I was able to smell the chemicals around me, I was able to smell the food cart going down the hall, and she wasn't bringing me food, by the way, because I was on an intravenous feed for a number of days. You don't need to be able to smell to be alive. Okay. Plenty of people are born without a sense of smell, or through an accident, they lose their sense of smell. You and I right now, Svava, are looking at each other and we are listening to each other, which means that we have eyesight. It means we have the sense of hearing. People like Helen Keller are great examples that you can live a fully significant, meaningful life without eyesight or hearing. Then it occurred to me that there are people who are born, or through a series of situations that happen, who have no sense of physical touch, no sense of pain. There are people who are able to stick their hand in a boiling pot of water to get something out and not feel it, or put their hand in a fire and not feel the pain. And they're constantly getting injured because they don't feel the pain. And so it occurred to me that anything outside of being able to breathe is a gift. We're given these things to enhance our lives in some way. And so this pain that I'm feeling, there's somebody out in the world who's wishing they could feel pain. And so it occurred to me that this pain is not a curse, that this pain is a gift. and that this gift is meant to grow me in some way, to be something that I would not only be able to teach myself about appreciation for life, but also to be able to turn around. I know that I am never given anything for my own edification. I learned that all of the gifts that I've been given are meant for me to turn around and use that to be a blessing to other people. And so this pain that I'm in, I know that it will fade at some point, but it in and of itself was a gift to me to make me just realize that every breath is a miracle. Everything that I can feel is meaningful and there for a reason. And so I can say to you that having filed bankruptcy twice, having gone through a difficult divorce, having experienced the death of my daughter, having experienced other hardships and now cancer, none of those things, which I used to think were just curses and punishment and life out to get me, each and every one of those been amazing gifts to me. They've been blessings. And the reason that I can call it a gift, the reason I can sit here and tell you that the death of my daughter was, while in its circumstances was tragic, but it was a gift to me, it's because I've decided to call it a gift. Because making the decision to find blessing in it makes me feel better than making a decision to find pain and suffering in it. And so it's this journey to the heart, which I love what you do. This journey to the heart is, for me, it's a journey through my thought processes, through the stories that I tell myself. Is this a story that energizes me? Is this a story that makes me complete? Is this a story that makes me powerful? Is this a story that makes me able to bring healing or ease suffering in somebody else's life? If not, then let's start a restorying process. And so this is what I do with myself. It's what I do with my clients. I help people through a restorying process. And there's some blessing in everything. In the midst of a tragedy, there is love. There is blessing there. And you might not, and I don't expect people who have lost their daughters or who have just lost a family member in a mall shooting, on Christmas Eve. I don't expect you to be able to say, yes, this was a great thing while you're going through it. But if you will at least be open to the potential that at some point in the future, through the story that you tell yourself, that you will find blessing in it, then that can help you go through what you're going through today, whatever it is, whether it's a relationship breakup or the memory of a trauma, or the current existence of a trauma in your life. We can't control very often the physical circumstances around us. We cannot control the behaviors that cause another human being to do something to us physically. But I'm only a victim when I decide that I'm a victim.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, Bruce. I'm so glad you're here sharing this powerful, powerful, powerful information. And I have my tissue because every time I look at your book, where you share this story, and I've told it to you, and I've shared it with my friends because it really touched that part of my heart where I understand what you're talking about. But I had never, I'd never heard someone so eloquently describe that even in the worst of the pain, can you make a different decision. And I've had a couple moments like that in my life, but the gift in it now is that, I can look back and say, I'm grateful for all of it because it's now giving me the gift to help others. and especially around cancer. I mean, you had stage 4 cancer, and you now, in your heart of hearts, can stand in front of others and say, yes, you can heal, you can transform yourself. And that's such a huge gift, because there's so many out there who will not believe it, who will not have anything to do with that possibility. And I understand it, and I respect it, and I honor people's path and their journey. But I think more and more of us are starting to recognize the power of that choice, of that decision. So, and I mean, and that's why when your book came out, I bought 10 copies and I sent it to all my best friends, because I'm like, you guys, you've got to read this. And just like, there was no agenda, just like, if you want simple instructions to living fully, you know.
I'm bending down for a reason. I'm reaching for something.
Okay.
Since you held up a copy of my book, you know, one of the things that that I was able to do, actually before I wrote that book, I knew that I had to tell myself a story that left me victorious. So, you know, knowing that we are hope-shaped creatures. My recovery process, having lost so much blood on the operating table, my surgeon came to me and he said, Bruce, given the amount of cutting that I had to do, given the amount of blood loss that you've had, I just want you to be aware of the possibility that you might never again run a marathon. You know, and if not, because your body is going to need so much time in order to recover, you're not even going to want to feel like bouncing that area of your body through jogging. You're not even going to want to start running again for 7 to 9 months. Let's see if we can do this. So this is me. Yeah, here we go. This is me lying in my hospital bed on April of 2014. I ran the Boston Marathon exactly 1 year later.
Just amazing.
My surgeon didn't think I would be able to do it. And it's all about the story, and it's all about the belief in the possibility. I didn't know that I would be able to, but I had it on my vision board. I mentioned it to some people that someday I wanted to, I didn't know when. First of all, I was using a walker. I was so weak, I had to use a walker. I was out in my cul-de-sac with my 92-year-old next door neighbor, and he and I would do laps around the cul-de-sac in order to get back in shape. And he could do a lot more laps than I could. But I started talking about it. I started a podcast. And I happened to mention on my Life as a Marathon podcast that one of my bucket list goals was to run someday the Boston Marathon. Somebody heard me, and somebody reached out to me and said, Bruce, I know you want to run the Boston Marathon. I can make that happen. And so I ran barely. You can pretty much bet after I ran across the finish line with my arms, I pretty much collapsed.
Yes.
But I did it. And so have visions, have these dreams, and hold on to them, because that's what fuels the behaviors that we take today. Don't give up. Hope will come. Happiness will come into your life if you believe that it's possible.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And time has gone by so fast for us here, Bruce, that I know, you're going to give people some great gifts as part of listening to the summit and being a part of, part of the summit. There's going to be links with access to some information after here. But again, I just, I can't thank you enough, Bruce. Sharing your vulnerability and your authenticity and just living how you live wholeheartedly. I just so admire that about you. And I have to say, also being a man, I mean, you are just such a gift.
Thank
to
you.
me and to both men and women out there, because there is not enough men, in at least that I have seen. I'm starting to see more that are
Mhm.
so open to their hearts and really sharing authentically from that place. And that's where I feel like you're such a powerful role model, and I'm so grateful for you.
Well, thank you. And you know, I love you and believe so much in the work that you're doing. So it was, you know, it was and it always will be a no-brainer for me when Svava calls or emails and says, Bruce, will you go on this summit or do this event or whatever. If Svava calls, the answer is just yes. It doesn't matter what it is. The answer
Oh,
is yes, because I love you and what you do, and you have the same passion for bringing healing into people's lives, and so we are, you know, we are kindred souls, and always will be. So thank you for what you do.
thank you. And absolutely. I mean, I want to see that people who have overcome trauma aren't just surviving, but thriving. And
Right.
that's why I'm putting on a summit like this. You know, there is a lot more, because I was a survivor for a long time. And then I'm like, wait a minute,
Hmm.
I want something better out there. I want a bigger vision. So, you know,
Yeah.
putting on these summits, bringing to people that have had those challenging experiences and the experts that are teaching us, you can change, you can transform your mind, your body, you can connect to spirit, you can really, you know, by
Absolutely.
choice, you get to create the life that you want to live. And I mean, that's my life today. And I you would have talked to me 10 years ago, no way would I thought
Yeah.
that I'd be here doing this. So
Yeah. Me too. Me
exactly.
too.
So Bruce, tell our audience, you know, they're going to get a copy of your.
Yes. Yes, I have an e-version of the book. It
Mm-hmm.
is, it's the first 5 chapters of the book. So it's
Beautiful.
over 50% of the book. You'll get the gist of it. It's real value. The other thing that I do as a life coach, I have a group coaching community. It's called my Life is a Marathon coaching community. And it's a wonderful opportunity for like-minded people to get together. We talk. We have weekly video calls just like this. So everybody who comes, if you normally just went to my site, you'd get the first 7 days for free. But I'm going to give everybody who listens to this summit the first 30 days for free. So you can come in, participate in the group. You can participate in 4. We do once a week. We do group video calls where we normally talk about a specific topic. Sometimes it's just open Q&A, but you'll be able to interact with all of the other members there. You'll be able to private message with me, participate in the group calls for the first 30 days. And if it's something that you want to continue with afterwards, we'd love to have you as an ongoing member. But I want you to at least be able to experience a group of like-minded people who are all working together for self-development and in whatever the way you define that. We don't have any, you know, canned, okay, success, you know, looks like this. Success is however you define it. And so as a life coach, that's what I love doing, is just helping you figure out, what does success mean for you? And then how can I help you achieve that in your life? So yeah, so the first 30 days free, the links you'll provide there, and it'll be fun. I look forward to meeting a bunch of people.
That's awesome. And I know the gift that they will get just, you know, from the 5 chapters of your book. I mean, it's simple, but yet so profound. And
Thank you.
that you really put it in a language that is like, yes, of course. It's like, I can't argue with this one, you know.
I'm
So
not much for fancy language, you know,
no,
and
but
yeah,
I'm the
I,
same way, Bruce. Again, that's where you and I are the same. You know, just helping people, you know, better themselves through no nonsense. You know, let's just get to the gist of what really is important, and that is that we all get to be connected with our hearts, start with being kind to ourselves, and then we extend that to others.
amen.
Yes. So beautiful gifts. And again, those links will be right underneath. And, you know, Bruce, you have all these podcasts out there. You put out beautiful Twitter reminders for people, quotes, Facebook pages. I mean, because my brain needs support, right? I can't always just handle this all by myself. I surround myself with daily messages that help me tweak if I get off track. Okay, all right, let's just keep reminding ourselves this is where we're headed. This is the journey, right? So we all need support. And I really want to encourage our listeners to take advantage of the free 30-day with you. And I'm sure they'll become lifelong members.
It's fun. It's fun. I enjoy social media. So, for over 400,000 Twitter followers, and I don't know, it's close to 12,000 Instagram followers, and it's just a lot of fun. So
yes,
would love to have anybody follow and interact with me in that way as well.
That's beautiful. Well, thanks again, Bruce, for your time and your heart and your presence and your wisdom.
Look forward to seeing you soon.
Absolutely. And to our audience, thank you again for joining us today for another wonderful, heartfelt interview. And be on the lookout in your email for a couple more coming your way tomorrow.